Hi there, this is Pam. I want to share with you some things that took place this week that just took my breath away. And I'm going to be checking my notes because I just don't want to skip anything. On Tuesday, April 14th at 3 a.m., I was awakened to a shove on my shoulder, and I opened my eyes and the lights are on and my husband is standing over me. And he says, "Get up. You have to take me to the ER. My blood pressure is up, my heart is racing, the machine can't even read my heart rate." So I'm trying to gather what I can and grab stuff because I know that whenever we go to the ER, it's at least 4 hours. So I'm grabbing what I can, and as we're driving, my husband's saying, "Run the red light, hurry, get there, let's go." So we get there, we get to the ER, and I drop him off, and he's heading for the door, and I go and park. And due to the pandemic, the ER door is locked. So he knocks on the door, and a nurse is meeting him at the door, taking his temp. I park. I'm hustling up because I want to slip through the door and not make her unlock the door a second time. And as I get to the door, she holds up her hand and says, "I'm sorry, due to the pandemic, only one patient can go in at a time and no one can go with the patient." And I am taken aback. I knew people were in the hospital without their families there, but I didn't think of how this applied to entering my husband in ER. I always need to be there. I always need to hear what they're saying because my husband might not feel well enough to hear all of that. So he goes in and I don't, and I go sit in the car, and I am thinking, what do I do? So I texted him and just said, "I'm going to sit out here for a half an hour, and if you don't come out, then I'm going home and waiting for word from you." So he doesn't come out, and he says, "Fine, go home." I try to sleep, can't sleep. In all of this, I quickly say a simple prayer. I know God understands my heart. It doesn't have to be very elaborate. So, my husband was given some IV medicines, and it helped calm his heart. And they wanted, at 5:45, he messaged me and said, "Blood tests came back fine, going to be admitted here for a couple of days, still in ER, and trying to conserve my phone battery." So at 7 a.m., I gathered a few things to take to him, a phone charger and books and all of that. And after a little bit, he messaged again that he had finished that book, bring him another book. So at 11 a.m., I took more books, and I knew I had to drop them off at ER with, information as to what room he's in and all of that. As soon as I got to the door, before I could say anything, the nurse opened the door and shoved a thermometer in my mouth. Okay. Then after that, she talked with me, and I told her I was here to drop off, and I asked, "Is there any chance I can get to a spot where I'm just outside my husband's hospital room window just to talk to him and wave to him?" And she said, "Just give me a little bit of time. I'm going to check with the nurse in charge." So the nurse in charge came, and he spoke with me a bit. He was very, very kind and loving. And he said, "Tell you what, we will give you a mask," which masks are in shortage. "And I'm going to quickly walk you through the ER room, the admitting room, and into a hall and out so that you can access his window." And so it was a very isolated courtyard, and I was able to stand at the window, and as it happened to be, a nurse was in there attending my husband at the time. She very lovingly opened the window so we could talk through the window. And that was really nice. While that went on, it's about noon, and I get a text from my brother-in-law. "Not to burden you with more stuff, but your husband might want to know my mom is not getting out of bed today. She was shaking real bad. She has Parkinson's. She was shaking real bad this morning, and Dad could not wake her up. My sister-in-law, he gives her name, was able to get her to respond a little, and my mother-in-law took a sip of water, and she had laid back down, and we were questioning, is this due to her meds? I offer a simple prayer at that time. And the day goes on. So at 5 p.m., I get another text message from my brother-in-law, and he says that my mother-in-law is finally awake and she's very groggy. Thank you, simple prayer. At 8:30 p.m., my husband was stabilized and stabilized and released from the hospital. So we got him settled in at home with plans to see the specialist on the 17th. And at that time, our son calls to notify us that he got a new job. And it was a very fast turn of events that got him that job. It wasn't like a long-term application. The backstory is my son-in-law has had a very difficult couple of years, and most recently he lost his job about 3 months ago. So unemployment will soon run out. He's been applying for jobs and not much has come of it, and this one came about during the pandemic, during a time where people are losing jobs. Thank the Lord. He has a job. It might not be a lifetime job, we don't know, but he has a job. And so in the midst of this, God has blessed him. And that was just 36 hours after my husband started his fun in the ER. That same afternoon, we learned much after the fact, my dear son-in-law was driving home from work as a surgical tech. And our daughter texts us only after we push 2 days later for the info. And her text is, on Tuesday, he was driving home on the freeway and swerved to avoid something that fell off a semi-truck driving in front of him. He first hit the divider and then went to the other direction into a grassy ditch. He's okay. No serious injuries or notable whiplash that we can tell. Just been sore and very tired the last few days. So the car is in the shop and waiting to get insurance review, but so far it's about $16,000 of damage. Tuesday was a train wreck. Grandma, Dad in the hospital, and then that. Didn't want to add to your guys' plate, so didn't want to share about it yet. Our precious son-in-law, he could have died on his way home. It struck me how just 3 days prior, I had posted something on Facebook showing a video of people that were driving around his hospital. And as they drove around, they were praying for the medical staff and all the medical workers. And so my post held this message. Sorry. This is so beautiful is what I wrote. My precious son-in-law is a surgical tech at Kauai Hospital. This week he raised his hand to be the tech who would assist in surgeries with COVID patients. He will be required to take extra safety precautions for that, and he notified us he is self-isolating even more than before. Someone asked me, why did he volunteer for this? My reply, because this is who he is. And then I wrote, see his photo in the comments, and please uplift these medical people in your prayers. So as a result of that post, many people, my friends, responded with emojis and comments showing that they would be supporting in prayer as well. And so the prayers of the drivers in this video and the prayers of so many people went before my son-in-law previous to this accident. I continue to give God my simple prayer. So all of this happened within 36 hours in the middle of this pandemic. Much of these events were impacted by the current pandemic situation. And God has demonstrated his loving protection over our family. God has been in control, whether we pray or acknowledge him at all. And so I have a mental picture of our family throughout this 36 hours. And I picture God holding us in his hands. And at a certain point, the flames were getting very dangerously close to us. So he just folded his hands over us and kept us protected. And then when the flames lightened up, he opened his hands and he refreshed us with loving water, cooling water. We didn't even know all of this was going on at once. And yet God protected us. So when the story of my son-in-law came to us last, it wasn't the same sequence of events, but it came to us last, I gasped. It was breathtaking how God had protected us. And it's undeniable, his care and protection. All I can offer is a simple prayer, but we also have to be aware to see what he is doing in our lives. Thank you for your involvement in our life, and thank God for all that he's done.